In this unit, we will be discussing plants. Plants belong to the domain Eukarya and the kingdom Plantae. So on the front of your plant booklet, you need to write in Eukarya as the domain and Plantae as the kingdom. There are four major characteristics that all plants have. Plants are multicellular, so every single plant is going to be made of more than one cell. Those cells are eukaryotic. They all have a nucleus in them. They have cell walls, which are going to help to support that cell and give it its rigidity or structure. And then they're going to be autotrophs. And the reason I say most is because while they all are autotrophs, meaning they produce their own food and they do so through photosynthesis, we do know of the few exceptions of carnivorous plants like the Venus flytrap, etc. But they're still going to be autotrophs. They're still going to be able to make their own food. They just also need nutrient supplement in the case of the Venus flytrap. And then, so those four things need to be written underneath your characteristics of plants. And then below that, I would just like you to add that all plants are going to need sunlight, water, air, and minerals in order to survive. So on the next page, you should see it says plant types, and the two big bullet points are going to be for the two major types of plants. Plants can either be non-vascular or vascular. So at this point, just write in the two bullet points, non-vascular and vascular. Underneath non-vascular, where it says number 1, please write down the characteristics here of non-vascular plants. Non-vascular plants are small. They're going to reproduce using spores, not seeds, so they are not seed plants. They have spores, kind of like fungus. They're going to have no true roots, stems, or leaves, so they don't have those main structures that we typically think of when we think of plants. A couple examples of non-vascular plants are on the top right over here. We see there are mosses, and mosses are going to be growing near water sources because they don't have those root systems. They have to have water pretty readily available. Hornworts are another example, and then liverworts are another example of non-vascular plants. So our first plant type was non-vascular, and that means that they didn't have the ability to pull water up through them because they didn't have any kind of vascular tissue. They were also seedless, meaning they reproduced by spores. There are some seedless plants that are vascular, that are going to have that vascular tissue. So under number 2, where it says vascular, under the bullet point vascular, you'll put seedless. So these are vascular plants, but they don't have seeds. So they're larger than non-vascular because they have vascular tissue that can pull water and nutrients up to parts of the plant, and then they are going to develop true roots, stems, and leaves, which are those vascular tissues. An example of seedless vascular plants are ferns. Ferns are fairly common around this area. As you can see, they have those leaves and stems and roots, so they are vascular, but they don't reproduce with seeds. Instead, ferns reproduce using spores, just like moss and liverworts and hornworts. And spores on a fern are going to be found underneath the frond, which is considered like its leaf. And each frond is going to have these dots here. But if you look really closely at those dots, they contain a lot of smaller dots, and those smaller dots are what are going to contain the spores of that plant. The third type of plant that exists are seed vascular plants. These are probably what you typically think of when you think of plants. Plants that produce seeds, plants that are vascular, meaning they have leaves, stems, roots, etc. Seed plants can be broken into one of two types, which are gymnosperms and angiosperms. We will do more detailed notes on those two items tomorrow, but today we just want to get the basic understanding of what gymnosperms and angiosperms are. So both of these are seed-producing plants. They have seeds, but where those seeds are located is the difference between them. Gymnosperms are naked seeds. That's what that means. Gymno means naked, sperm is seed. So this means that the seeds don't develop within a fruit. They're just going to develop in usually a cone of some kind, and they are exposed. They're not housed in that seed or in that fruit. Angiosperms are, well, angio means cased, and sperm again means seed. So these are encased within a fruit in this case. So angiosperms are going to be flowering plants whose seeds develop within a fruit. They are in that fruit. So any fruit plant, any plant that produces seeds within a fruit or vegetable, because vegetables are technically fruit, they are going to be angiosperms. So those are the two main differences between those two. And so at the bottom of your page 2, it says draw and label an example of a gymnosperm and an angiosperm. So on one half of that, I want you to write angiosperm, cased seed, draw a little flowering plant that's then in turn produces fruit. And then on the other half, you should write gymnosperm and how that means naked seed, and draw some type of pine or cone plant that produces cones where the seeds will be. And then that is it for our notes today.